It was Christmas Eve, 1971. We are crossing the border, or what was called then the Iron Curtain, into communist Czechoslovakia. It's my wife and I and two of our dearest friends, Joe and Judy Portali. They were friends from college who are now working in Lausanne on YWAM staff. And we were living and working in Holland at the time, working with a small group led by a man named Brother Andrew, or better known as God's Smuggler. And yes, we were smuggling Bibles into Czechoslovakia. These were Russian Bibles, actually, that were headed on up into the Soviet Union. We drove through the countryside, snowing lightly and cold, very cold. We're driving through villages where people are getting ready for Christmas. They're scurrying about, wagons being led by horses, hay wagons, people coming from market carrying their fish, their carp, which is a tradition in that part of the world where they would bring a live fish, a carp, home, put it in the bathtub until it was ready to cook. And so we drove on through the countryside all the way up to the eastern border, Moravia it was called, and found the house that we were looking for. We knocked on the door, and there we found the pastor of the church in that town, and he and his family are celebrating Christmas Eve. And so they welcomed us in, made us part of the family. We were amazed that they were so excited to see us. But we came and they introduced us to some of their customs, one of which was called a love feast. They took a wafer, and a big round wafer, and they broke it into pieces, and they passed it around to the different family members and expressed to each other their love, their admiration, their thanksgiving to the different members of the family. And we were taken back by this wonderful custom. And in fact, this was taken back to Lausanne by Joe and Judy Portali, who shared this with the community there. And this is where we got our name for Love Feast in YWAM, was from this tradition in Czechoslovakia. As the evening went on, the pastor said, we have work to do. And so we went out and emptied part of the car there of Bibles and put them in his car. And we also had 3 suitcases of clothing that we had brought. And for some reason, the pastor seemed more excited about the clothes than he was even about the Bibles. We didn't understand it at the time, but he drove off into the night and went to deliver these Bibles and clothing. We came back and he shared with us that there was a man that was leaving the very next morning for the Soviet Union. And he said he was so excited to receive this shipment of Bibles and clothing that were the very next day to be taken on into the Soviet Union. Well, we continued on our celebrations those next days. The next day was Christmas, of course, and they took us to 6 different church meetings, and each one they had known we were coming and had waited until we got there for their festivities, which included eating. And so 6 meetings we shared, and not only shared the word, but we shared the festivities and the food that they had prepared. So you can imagine what we felt like after six meetings. And that wasn't the end of it. They took us on the next days to other meetings, and on New Year's Day, the same thing was repeated. 6 different meetings with 6 different times of eating their wonderful foods. It was a wonderful trip, and so much more I could share about that. But it was the trip that we went on some years later back to Czechoslovakia, now free Czechoslovakia. This is almost 20 years later, and the wall had come down, and Czechoslovakia was now free. And we arrived this time with my wife and our 2 daughters who were with us, and we called our friend who was one of the family members that night, Christmas Eve night, and he was just a boy at the time. Now he was the pastor of the church in Prague. We called him, and he was so excited that we were there. He said, quickly, get on a tram and come as quick as you can. We have someone that you need to meet. So we got on a tram, made our way to his house, the church, which is right beside the church there. And there, sitting in the living room, was a lady speaking Russian. And he introduced us to her, and she said, I'm the sister of Joseph Bondarenko. Well, I knew very well who Joseph Bondarenko was. He was probably not so well known in the Western countries, but in the Soviet Union, just prior to this time, he was well known, and in fact, especially to the authorities. He was the most wanted man in the Soviet Union at the time. He had spent a good part of his life in prison. He was an evangelist and was very akin to Billy Graham. His name was so well known, and he attracted those kind of crowds, not the thousands, but sometimes it could be up to 1,000 people would come to a village. At that time, they were not allowed to have evangelistic meetings, but they could have a funeral or a wedding, and often people came from everywhere. And so you could have 1,000 people come to a little grandma's funeral that very few knew her, but this gave the ability to gather for them, and they gathered, and they had this big meeting then of over 1,000 people, and Joseph would preach. And this would, of course, often get him into trouble, and he went back into prison again. Well, this time his sister was telling us the story, saying that that particular Christmas that we had come to Czechoslovakia in 1971, the authorities had come and once again had arrested Joseph. But this time they wanted to really make a point of it. And they took not just Joseph, but she said they took everything from us. They took our furniture, they took our clothing. They left us with nothing. And we didn't know what we were going to do. But here, this man arrived from Czechoslovakia, and he had with him several suitcases of the most wonderful winter clothes that you can imagine. And you can't even begin to think of how we felt that Christmas, that we were not forgotten. God remembered us, and it was such a wonderful gift. And later we found that you were the ones that brought these clothing to us that night. I explained to her what had happened, that just prior to our leaving, a businessman from northern Holland called and said, I am just in the process of restocking my store and getting ready for spring, and had these beautiful winter clothes. Didn't know what to do with them. And the thought came to my mind, I wonder if they could use these in Eastern Europe. And that's when he called us, and we made that trip to pick them up. And God was just putting these things together. Little did we know that these clothes would arrive just in time for this family to meet their need that Christmas. And what a wonderful, wonderful Christmas gift that was. And this is our God who loves us and is concerned for us and prepared us to make that trip, and just timed it so that the next day those things could go to this family in need. That's what Christmas is all about. And we do wish you a very, very Merry Christmas as you celebrate the coming of our Lord Jesus, that was our greatest gift to us.